What up, traders? What up, investors? Ken here from Dyslexic Investor, and we're going to be looking at a smorgasbord of charts here. First and foremost, we're going to be looking at CrowdStrike, more like CrowdStrike to the ground. I don't know. Trying to make a dad joke there. That's totally bombed. Just like their patch on Thursday night. Anywho, looking at Crowd, this is ticker symbol CRWD. If you haven't known it, if you haven't just woken up from a coma, they put out a patch update. Very small fix on Thursday evening of last week, and it brought down basically every Windows machine that had the CrowdStrike Falcon sensor linked to it within the kernel. So that brought down the airlines, that brought down banks, that brought down hospitals, people going to get surgeries, all this stuff. So this is going to be very hard to assess on the overall damage. I think there's still the ripple effects on how things are figuring out. Of course, the lawyer team, the legal department within CrowdStrike's pretty sure their hair's on fire and they're trying to figure out every single thing possible and how they're going to be able to mitigate this. How many people are already probably putting suits against them, customer complaints, all these things, very critical. With that being said, technically speaking, it's a lot of red, right? This is a waterfall red. We're looking here on the weekly side, 3 years here. We're gonna go in more detail here in a second. But again, if you're interested on trading on how I trade, I use Tasty Trade. Link in the description below if you're more in tune to start looking at options and/or I think a very fantastic platform for trading and investing, that is. So looking at Crowd here on the daily side here, you see that again, that Thursday night, everything was it wasn't really that great going into that Thursday night update. Again, of course, you couldn't tell the future. We're trading around like 347. Nothing to really write home about, but it was trading below the 50-day, which is that golden line here. Yellow if you're colorblind, and yeah, uh, that was trading below it. That has happened before here, where it's kind of popped back up, and a couple times it kind of sank lower here. But this was going down with a lot of the other stocks that we saw. We had a lot of stocks getting ahead of themselves. Some were extended and so forth. So this was somewhat normal within the tech group. But of course, this gap down to basically what was that, close around 342, and it closed around 304 the following day. I think it was like 11 or 10%. But now coming into over the weekend, they put the update out and so forth, still down drastically, $41. So we're trading around $263, $265 here in the aftermarket hours. But we got back to basically the beginning of the year's kind of lows. So that around 245 is what we could potentially seeing. This is going to be very hard to assess because again, the damage is basically somewhat unknown, and this is a very large IT technical issue, and I'm sure this is going to create many ripple effects that we are not seeing in present day. This will take quarters, potentially 12 to 18 months to really figure out on how this has impacted Crowd as a whole. Because again, if you understand Crowd was the Ferrari. They were the creme of the creme within the cybersecurity box, in the sense of being the top dog. This is not a good look, right? So be careful with that. Go with Linux. Anywho, that was a joking aside. Let's go ahead and jump into some other some better news. We're going to be looking at Tesla. Look at this thing go. Tesla, we're seeing kind of come out here. If you've been living on a rock as well, Tesla has come to life. It basically was in a downward trend. You see here in that beautiful yellow line, crisp line that I drew here, kind of signaling the downward trend, and we're finally breaking above it. And this is what you want to see on that momentum of change. We had a huge gap up for basically from 200 going to almost 250. Now we're kind of trading in and around of it. We have earnings this week. Again, those are very large catalysts. Are we going to see more talk about their AI robo taxi kind of stuff coming up? Are we going to be Elon going to be ranting and raving about something else? We don't know. It's kind of you're playing Russian roulette in a sense of how the people on the street, aka the hedgies, are going to think regarding going to this. But retail is definitely behind Musk here, and we're seeing that really big pump up, breaking the downward trend and showing a lot of that key momentum coming through. Talking about key momentum, we got a special little clip here we're going to show here in a second. We're going to be looking at our boy from Fundstrat. He's going to be talking about IWM having a monster summer coming out of the potential rate cuts that are happening on some key market data on this Friday here. So let's go ahead and jump to that real quick. Let me get my information up here and here we go.
Next guest does say that this Friday's inflation data will likely shift the odds higher of a July and September rate cut.
He's been right a lot, right?
Summer of small caps, as he said. Joining us here at Post 9 is Tom Lee, Fundstrat Global Advisors, head of research, and a CNBC contributor. Tom, it's great to have you.
Like that?
Great to see you. You want to start with what the political news or the economic news? What's more important to you, do you think?
In the short term, it's the political news. But really, in the longer term, especially into year end, it's actually the economic news.
Explain why.
Well, in the short term, markets are very sensitive to, especially the sector level, depending on whether it's a Republican or Democratic taking the White House in November, and then especially all the congressional elections and state elections. So I think that's what you saw last week, is as probability shifted towards Trump, small caps, industrials, financials rallied.
And you're sticking with that call, which is for what, 40% over 10 weeks?
Yeah, the overlap is small caps are very
40%.
sensitive to a Fed cut, and really the probability of a Fed cut, that it's finally happening. And I think it's going to look like the October to December 2023 rally, which was almost 30%.
We'll take a look at
this
that.
One should be bigger because of the amount of short positioning and the amount of oversold in the Russell. So, yeah, 40% by the end of the summer.
I just want to dig into it. Does it make sense that tech, that NVIDIA and Tesla and Microsoft and Apple and Meta should be outperforming as the odds rise for a Democratic victory?
Some of that, it's, day-to-day, it can be noise, because last week you had the biggest down week for the NASDAQ in quite a long time. So I think there is a bit of a dead cat bounce. But to me, I agree with you. I don't think that the FANGs are necessarily a Kamala Harris, taking the White House trade.
But there is some.
That's a great point. Let's go ahead and dive back into the charts here. So again, he talked about the IWM monster rally, basically from the October to December run that we had basically in 2023. That's what we're highlighting here. Zooming in here. So that is basically, we went from 116 to basically 202. That is that 30% rally that he's talking about. He's talking for more. So where can that take us? I don't know if he's talking from 200. That would easily take us to 250 to 255, aka making a new all-time high. If we can kind of zoom out here a little bit, that's indicating a break of that previous high in the IWM. As you know, NASDAQ, S&P 500 have been making new all-time highs, but the IWM, which is the Russell 2000, the smaller caps, not the FANG stocks and so forth, have not been able to break out. And with that in lieu, the bull rally really won't start, or really hasn't started, until IWM really breaks out here. So what could we see on that front? Like 40% gap up. All right, so I did some back of the envelope math here. You see here on this line here, again, saying 40% in 10 weeks. That's 70 days. So we have 70 days and 1 hour and 10 minutes. That's the closest I can get. So basically 10 bars for each week here. We're seeing a 40% run. So we're looking around 280-ish plus. So that's what Tom's saying. Okay, just to put that in perspective, that's a massive run. Look at that straight up line here. That's going to be pretty massive. And is that in line with this here? So we can kind of just put that here. Gets kind of in line, right? Like, not exactly, but that is a massive run coming into, again, that October to September October, September, November run. So let's see on what happens. I think he's calling from this level around 200. So again, 280 price target in IWM by the end of summer. It's going to be a fun ride for sure. All right, looking at NVIDIA here and a couple more stocks here. We're seeing here NVIDIA just kind of cooling off here. Nothing to write home about. We're coming back to the 10 SMA here on the weekly side here, just kind of resting here a little bit, waiting to let other folks kind of take the lead and potentially seeing things go higher here. Some other things I wanted to look at is what are some other signs of breaking out. If I don't hear it very much, it's called the RSP, which is basically the equal weighted S&P 500, and this looks pretty phenomenal here. Let's go here on a daily side here. It gives you a little bit of a better picture here. This thing is trying to been breaking out for the past couple months here, and just kind of failing ever so slightly, like we saw with the IWM. This especially could be a catalyst on seeing this thing skyrocket to new all-time highs. Again, this thing has been struggle bust for sure, not really making any significant highs because, again, equal weighted S&P 500, it's not the core 6 or 7 Magnificent 7 that are driving 35, 40, 50% of the gains. This is makes every single one equal weighted, hence in the name. On that note, let's go look at some other favorite stocks that I'm looking at is Make My Trip, MMYT. Oh, if I can type YT. This thing has been a rocket ship here. Nothing else to report here. It's just continue going higher and holding that 10-week line here, which I like to see. One that I've seen people talk about quite a bit is Kava. That has been kind of slightly selling off just a very little bit here. Let's go to the daily side here. It is breaking below the 50 EMA here on the daily side here and kind of trying to find a bottom here. I think that this is potentially a level that it could support here. This is on a previous breakout here, basically around $79 to $80. If that doesn't hold and we see some substantially more red selling and larger red candles down, that's going to be a little bit troublesome there. We could see that potentially switch in the trend and see how that continues to finish. On that note, guys, if there's any stocks or so forth you want me to cover, please put it in the comments down below. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.